Joining me in the studio is Alysa Procida. She is the curator of the Museum of Inuit Art. She is also the editor of the Inuit Art magazine, recently launched. Now you'll meet her in a moment. Later in the interview, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top success tip, and you're going to hear Alyssa's. Well, Alysa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So nice having you here. Now, what interested you to begin with in art?
I've always been interested in art. I think there's something universal and interesting and creative about art in any form. And so I studied art history as well as English in university. I ended up going away from art for a little bit during my graduate studies in the English department, but really, really missed it because I do find that art deeply enriches my life. And so when I decided to go into museum work, I was very, very lucky to get into working in an art museum.
I mean, you're a young woman. You're 27.
Yes, I am.
And that's, to be a curator at a museum at the age of 27 is remarkable. So congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Now, I know that you have this passion for Inuit art and the artists in the Arctic. Do you remember that moment that you said, oh my God, this is what I want to do?
I went into the Museum of Inuit Art right when there was a solo exhibition of an artist who has unfortunately passed away named Kananganak Pudugu from King Knight or Cape Dorset.
Ah, well-recognized artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Been inducted into the Royal Canadian Academy of Arts. I mean, just outstanding. And the entire interior room of the museum was covered in his graphics. And they're so full of life, and they're so full of personality, and they're so subtle and interesting that I was just immediately hooked.
So you landed a job as a curator at the museum. What does a curator do?
Basically, I pick and choose what I think would be interesting for our visitors and important for artists, and then I put that on display for the public.
What kind of trends are you seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of interesting trends coming out of the Arctic, and in many ways there's a move towards personalized, interesting, interpretive expression. I think many people envision art made by Inuit to be soapstone dancing bears, which are beautiful. However, there's so much more going on in the Arctic. Lots of interesting use of emerging media, photography, film, games. It's sort of endless. Yes, games, video game studios in the Arctic. It's fabulous.
I mean, tell me a little bit about the museum.
We've been open for 5.5 years, so we're still fairly young, and we are the only museum south of the Arctic devoted exclusively to art made by Inuit.
Wow.
Yeah, so we do cover the history, breadth, range, and depth of art made by Inuit. Primarily, our collection consists of the visual arts, so sculptures, prints, drawings, textiles, dolls, and clothing. We have about 600 objects on display at any time, and that includes our permanent collection as well as rotating special exhibitions.
And do you get a chance to travel up to the north and meet artists? And
I think it's a really important part of what I do. So I've been to the Arctic on a research trip in Kangirklini or Rankin Inlet in Nunavut, and I get to go back again periodically.
How exciting!
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think it's very important to get a sense of where the art is actually being produced. And when I first went there, it was a really emotional experience actually, because I spend 40+ hours a week looking at the art and looking at the landscape, but to actually experience it was something completely different. We also make a real effort to bring artists down to the museum so that they can see what we're doing and give us their feedback, but also have a personal connection to our visitors and help to explain their art a little bit more personally.
So when you were up there, do you remember a time when you were just so touched by an artist or something that you saw or experienced there that touched your heart?
A few times, actually. Being out on the land, so on the tundra, was an amazing experience. You get such a sense of vastness from the landscape, and such a sense of how not small you are, but how you're part of a much greater, more important kind of environment. And it really reminded me very clearly that what I do is serving artists in the North. It's not to be self-serving. It's not to sort of increase my career, my prestige, but I really do have a responsibility to those people. And then seeing the artists at work and hearing them talk about their personal experiences is always incredibly moving for me.
Now, you started a magazine recently, a new magazine.
We did.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Inuit Art Magazine is the only quadrilingual publication devoted to art made by Inuit.
Quadrilingual.
Yes, 4 languages.
Wow.
Yeah, so we publish in Inuktitut syllabics, Inuinnachtuun, French, and English. We also publish digitally, so you can get a free digital copy at inuitartmagazine.com, or you can order a print version from us.
So can you give us an idea then of some of the artists that we should be watching for, emerging or well-known artists here in Canada?
Yeah, there are so many artists working today that have a real unique perspective. I think one of Abraham Angik Rubin from Polituk and now British Columbia just had a huge exhibition at the Smithsonian. And he's widely regarded as one of the top sculptors working in Canada, regardless of ethnicity today. I would also strongly say that Bart Hanna from Igloolik is really reaching an entirely new level of sophistication in his art. What I've seen from him recently is just unbelievable. Like, it's hard for me to come up with the words to describe just how excellent his sculpture has become. But beyond more traditional art forms, I think people working in film, Alethea Arnacook-Baril is an amazing filmmaker, working in, I believe, Iqaluit, and lots of other kinds of media are becoming really important.
Now, it's time for our Good to Know Minute. And Alysa, I know that you've got a great success tip. I'm really looking forward to hearing this one.
I think my best success tip for anyone is to not be afraid to take risks and to absolutely say yes to opportunity. You have to work hard to put yourself in a situation where opportunity arises, but when it does, don't be afraid to take it, because I would absolutely not be in the position that I am today if I wasn't jumping at opportunities when they came up.
Well, that's good to know. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Alysa Procida, curator of the Inuit Art Museum, or Museum of Inuit Art, here in Toronto. So stay where you are. So what is it about Inuit art that makes it so special and unique?
Inuit art, as we understand it in the modern sense, comes out of a very unique set of circumstances. So Inuit had been producing art objects for thousands of years, really.
Yes, sure, it's been around a very long time, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And generally small pieces, generally made out of ivory, meant to be transportable, and made out of materials that Inuit were using for tools. And then in the 1940s, Inuit had a humongous upheaval in their culture. The Canadian government was moving them off the land and into communities for the first time in their history. They were being evangelized very aggressively. Residential schooling came to the Arctic for the first time, and so Inuit needed a way to support themselves financially, but also to express themselves in their culture. And so that's really where we mark the period of the birth of modern Inuit art, which is what most people would recognize as the art form. So stone sculptures, for example, come out of this period. And there was a few years where it was very obviously meant for consumption or commercialization, where Inuit were sort of instructed about things they thought Southern audiences would be really interested in, such as totem poles with Arctic animals overlaid, rather than more West Coastal First Nations iconography. But what became very, very clear very, very quickly was that Southern audiences were not interested in that, because it was not a real representation of what those artists wanted to be making. And so from there, artists became much more in control of their own voices and have been producing art that's meaningful to them ever since. And that has been just wonderful to see the evolution of.
Artists are documenting our history in the making. And that would be no exception then for the artists in the Arctic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Inuit art, for many years, I think was best described as memory art.
Right, I've read that.
And what that means is not that Inuit are just sort of representing past memories, but that Inuit artists are reinforcing cultural traditions and spiritual traditions in the actual making of those objects. Most art objects made in the North, particularly in the visual arts, are not meant to stay in the North. They're meant to be exported to southern Canada or internationally. And so, yeah, and so you would think that if you're trying to represent, you know, cultural beliefs, you would want them to stay for people to see. Except that that's not quite the case of what's going on here. I think it's important, and artists that I've spoken to have indicated that it's very important to them to make these objects, and in the making of representations of the sea goddess or of traditional practices, that helps them keep that part of their culture alive. What you see from younger artists now is a real shift, though, into documenting and showing what's happening in modern Arctic communities. And so somebody like Kelly Himmerpick is making sculptures of men with boomboxes and snowmobiles and things that you'll really see people doing in Arctic communities. So you get to see changes in personal expression, changes in community life through the art, absolutely.
So Alysa, if anybody wants more information about the museum, where should they go?
They can visit our website at www.miamuseum.ca.
And there you've got information about events and the art, the collections, and okay, great.
Events, collections, upcoming exhibitions, and also all of our social media streams are there. So lots of ways to keep in touch with us.
Well, Alysa, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. It was very enlightening, and I wish you all the best with all that you do.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Well, for more information about Alysa Procida, of course, you can also visit my website at ExtraordinaryWomenTV.com. There you will find information about other past guests, past episodes, more about the show, and you can contact me again through ExtraordinaryWomenTV.com. And be sure to follow me on Twitter. Well, if you are interested in transforming your life, I hope these stories have inspired you. You've been watching Extraordinary Women TV. I'm Shannon Skinner. See you soon.